This is Texans TV.
Today on the show, Nick Caserio is the general manager of the Texans. We're going to hear from him and about him.
We're very blessed. We're just so happy to be here.
Don't move a muscle because Texans 360 begins now.
We are ready to rock in Houston. Rock and roll. Oh, let's go!
Guess when you think you've seen it all, there's always something else.
Hey there, and welcome into Texans 360, presented by Kroger. I'm your host, Drew Doherty, with my good pal, John Harris, a team analyst, and we've got a whopper of a show. We've got a lot to get into because the Texans have made a hire at general manager in Nick Caserio. We're going to hear from a Boston Globe writer who knows quite a bit about Caserio, and he's going to share his thoughts on what the Texans can expect. Plus, one of the Texans was mic'd up for last week's game in the season finale, so we're going to see that. But let's start things off with Caserio. 20 years of experience, 6 Super Bowl rings. He's had a lot of different roles in that organization. What does he bring to the Texans, John?
Well, I think there's an amazing work ethic when you talk to people around the Patriots. I mean, that's one of the first things they bring up is how hard he works. And I've seen that front and center. I was at a pro day probably 2-3 years ago, and he's running drills during a pro. I've seen him do that multiple times.
Yeah, we were there at Texas A&M's back in 2014. Sure.
Absolutely. And it was a few years later, and I'm watching him carry bags around to set up drills for linebackers. He's already thrown the DBs and wide receivers 100 passes probably, if not more. He's taking the bags, and I see him on his phone, and I'm like, man, what's he doing? Is he checking back in with home? I found out the next day that he was actually making a deal, making a trade for the Patriots at that time as he's getting ready for the pro day. So from that perspective, this guy is working 24/7, and he seems to me to be all about ball. And that's really fun for a guy like me who is all about ball as well.
Yeah, you know, the old quarterback in him never left. He set a lot of records at John Carroll University in the mid-1990s. And now let's hear what he had to say about, well, some of his first orders of business, some of the goals for the organization, and much more from his press conference on Friday.
Nick Caserio has been named the Texans' new general manager. He will run the football side of the organization.
Our goal is to build a program that centers on being selfless, willingly accepting challenges, which we unquestionably will face and have faced and will continue to face each day. Always put the team above yourself. Nothing will be more important than the team. Others before self, team before I. That will be the mindset, and that will be the expectation for everybody that walks into the building on a daily basis. I think where we are just from a calendar standpoint, so it's important to take inventory of where you are as a team, evaluate your own team. I would just say, when you talk about scouting and evaluating players, it's really hard to make a determination about other players until you intimately know what you have on your team. So the evaluation of your team, their strengths or weaknesses, what the vision for them is from the staff, and obviously whomever the head coach and his staff will have input on that. The one thing about the NFL that we know is change is constant, right? So there's typically about, call it 25 to 30% of your team that is naturally going to turn over, whether it's players leave, released, free agents. So there's a process in place. So this part of the year is understand your team, understand what you kind of have in place. There are a lot of qualified people here that I'm excited to work with. We'll sit down, we'll have a conversation, but again, you have to start with your team, have an understanding of what you have in place before you can actually project what's going to fit into your building, moving forward.
All right, that's some of Nick Caserio from Friday's press conference. In a little bit, you're going to hear from a guy who covered Caserio and the Patriots and still does with the Boston Globe and Ben Bolin. But let's talk about the pieces that Caserio has to work with, not named Deshaun Watson, because we know this guy is one of the best, if not the best quarterback in all the land. But there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of promise. You and I did a podcast about it earlier in the week on In the Lab, so make sure you check that out on HoustonTexans.com. But what are some of these building blocks that are in place for Caserio and company?
Well, first and foremost, we all know about number 4. I mean, Deshaun Watson's phenomenal, and so that's a great place to start for any general manager. When you think about what general managers have to do throughout the league, especially when you're going to a team that hasn't been great, you think quarterback. Well, we need to find a quarterback. Well, not here. And typically you need to find some offensive linemen. Well, you've got 2 cornerstone tackles. Those guys are still here. You've got some receivers that are still here. You obviously have to figure out what you're doing with Will Fuller, but man, you've got some promise in what you saw the last 5 weeks, even without Will, with Kiki QT, you still have Brandon Cooks. Defensively, look, it was not great this year. But through the wreckage, I think there were some pieces that you can find. I was really happy with the last few weeks of John Grenard and where he can go. Look, it's not perfect, but where he can go, I'm really excited about that. And Zach Cunningham in the middle. Look, Zach led the league in tackles, which isn't always a great stat.
Sure.
Because that's too many defensive plays. However, I saw a lot of things change and improve for him over the last 9 weeks of the year, especially after the bye. That's when you really saw Zach, I thought, go to a different level playing linebacker position.
Let me shoot a great shot into the wide unknown, because we don't know, but there's a lot of different ways to do this, to address these problems, to fix some of these problems, some of these challenges that are in front of him. He doesn't have a first-round pick. He doesn't have a second-round pick. Those are in Miami because of the Laramie Tunsil deal of a year ago. But he does have 8 draft picks. And if you look at what he's done and what the Patriots have done over the years, he likes to accumulate draft picks. Yeah. And they are very discerning. They are very judicious in free agency. So there's a lot of different ways he can attack going about fixing some of these issues.
You've been around me enough to know, Drew, that I'm a draft and develop guy. I've always been that. I've always felt like that's the way you do it. Now, you can't solely rely on that, but your foundation has to be that way. That's what you did for Deshaun Watson. You drafted, you're now developing him. Titus Howard, same thing. But I think even without the first or second, that's only this year. And he's going to be here. Nick Caserio is going to be here for a long time. So, yeah, you don't have first or second. But in being with New England, in making deals, I'm sure he's got everybody in this league on speed dial. And I would imagine that every general manager has him on speed dial, that if they're looking to move up, they see a player that they want, feeling they're one piece away. Nick says, okay, we'll move down. We'll pick up pieces. We'll accumulate. We'll move. That's been something that was a staple of the Patriots on draft day. But to me, you've got to hit in those rounds, 3, 4, 5. This team has always had first-round talent, no doubt. But it really went to a different level when it got a 5th rounder in DJ Reader. When it got a player like that, and you bring him to the mix. TJ Yates was a 5th rounder. You think, he's just a throw-in, and Matt Schaub's here. TJ Yates was a
Tell that to the
huge
Cincinnati
piece.
Bengals of 2011.
Absolutely. But that's what you do. You draft and you develop.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the words cheap labor, but the way that the CBA is set up, the rookies are on less financially restrictive deals, and that's what you have to bank on. And this team needs to fill holes with those young guys going forward.
You can use budget conscious if you don't want to say cheap.
That's a good one.
All right, we're not cheapskates, but after the break, we're going to talk with a guy and hear from a guy who's covered the Patriots quite a bit and still does for the Boston Globe. Don't go anywhere. Ben Bolin is interviewed by DP Sidhu up on Texans 360. Texans 360 is presented by Kroger, fresh for everyone. We're back on Texans 360, coming at you from the Ford Studios. Drew, John, and we're going to bring in DP Sidhu, our good pal, who had a nice conversation with Ben Bolin, who, hey, over the years, we've all talked with Ben, and he's got some pretty good insight on what happens with the Patriots, doesn't he?
Yeah, no doubt. If there's anybody up there that we trust to give us the truth, give us the skinny on a guy, on anything Patriots-wise, it's Ben Bolin.
All right, here is part of that conversation between DP and Ben.
Joining me for a special Deep Slant one-on-one, it's my good friend Ben Bolin. He's a senior NFL writer for the Boston Globe. We're obviously talking about the big news of the offseason. The Texans have decided to sign Nick Caserio as their next general manager. The deal is done, and Ben obviously has spent many years covering the Patriots. So, Ben, wanted to get your take on the news on Nick Caserio coming to Houston. What's it been like in New England, and what is it like over there for your market?
Well, I think it was viewed as only a matter of time that Nick Caserio would be leaving, although I do think some people were a little surprised by this because he did just sign a contract extension with the Patriots last spring. It was only for 2 years, and it's been clear that he's been looking to move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, and in his bio on the Patriots website, it says that he's credited as, quote, one of the architects of 3 of the last 6 Super Bowl rings. Obviously, he was there for all 6, but the last 3 he was there as in his current role. So with that being said, how big is his role when it comes to draft day and these contract negotiations? You had mentioned that his name is on a lot of these contracts that are signed.
Yeah, Nick Caserio has a lot of experience already doing contract negotiations, identifying guys, going back and forth with the agents. He's really the point person, for most of the free agents more than Belichick. Belichick gets on the phone with the guys, the team's top priorities, the guy that Belichick really wants to give the hard sell and recruit. But Nick Caserio is the point man. So the Texans are certainly getting an experienced negotiator. There are general managers getting jobs for the last several years who have far less experience and qualifications than what Nick Caserio brings to the table. And I'm sure it was not easy for him over the years seeing guys with less impressive resumes get these opportunities. So this is, I think, a long time coming for Nick Caserio, an opportunity that he certainly has earned. As you mentioned, he's been the number 2 guy in the organization since 2008. So he's overseen 3 Super Bowl champions and 2 other teams that made it to the Super Bowl but lost. So this guy's seen and done a lot. And even though this is his first time being a true general manager, Bill Belichick put a lot on his plate, and Nick Caserio is certainly, I think, very experienced at the position.
I think the next question, obviously now for Texans fans and for everyone sort of watching, is who the head coach will be. What sort of a coach will Nick Caserio pick?
Like Gerard Mayo is one of those guys, they say, he probably needs a few more years, but I could see maybe the Texans making him a surprise hire now. But the other guy I'm looking at who does have a Patriots connection is Brian Daboll, the Bills offensive coordinator, who knows Nick Caserio from way back when they were young pups with the Patriots in 2001. I think Daboll's been unbelievable this year. There are a lot of good candidates out there, and I don't have a great sense for where he's leaning, but it certainly seems like the Texans are doing their due diligence. They're doing a lot of interviews, looking under every corner right now. And there are a lot of good candidates. I really like the guy from Tennessee, Arthur Smith.
All right. Well, Ben, thank you so much for the time. Look forward to chatting with you throughout the offseason. Ben Bolin of the Boston Globe. Ben, appreciate it. And you can check out his stuff. He's on Twitter. Ben, what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is @BenVolin, and please check out my work at bostonglobe.com.
After the break, we're closing the book on 2020 and the Houston Texans. Don't go anywhere. This is Texans 360.
This is NRG Stadium. No fans in attendance, but Dre, somehow there's still a buzz in this building.
This is the first time I've ever been to a game with no fans. This is odd. It's quiet. You're going to have to create your own juice.
You can definitely tell just the atmosphere, the excitement, the energy is definitely different.
Guys, it is so good to see some fans in the building today.
This will be a super concentrated Texans fan base. On Sunday, they definitely give us a home field advantage.
It's intercepted. What? Pick six for the win. Fairbairn's kick is up, and it's good. Watson now has 30 TD passes, a new Texans record.
This crowd will just get extremely loud.
Drew Doherty and John Harris here on Texans 360. Let's close the book on 2020, okay?
Oh, please, let's do it.
You don't have many good things to look back on when you lose 12 games, but there were some glimmers, some silver linings, so to speak. Let's start with Deshaun Watson. The guy led the league in passing yards. He had a 112 passer rating, and he completed 70% of his passes through 33 touchdowns. Yeah. He was only picked off 7 times. This guy is magnificent, and this has got to be the low of the lows, team-wise, with him playing quarterback, right?
I would think so. I hope so. My goodness. At 4-12, to look at those numbers and then equate that to a 4-12 team, you're like, it doesn't compete. But watching every single rep of his from my perch all year long, it was amazing to see his growth as a quarterback, to be able to assess at the line of scrimmage, know who's coming, who's blitzing, who's dropping, where they're dropping to, what's the coverage behind it, and then knowing what beats that coverage. And then, Deshaun, we're going to take away all of your receivers by the time you play the Colts the first time, and yet still throws for 341 yards and has them 2 yards away from a potential go-ahead/winning touchdown against the Indianapolis Colts. And that's really when I went, okay, we didn't win this game, but that guy's pulling that off with guys that were on practice squad 3 weeks earlier, and he's doing that He's a special guy.
You bring up those practice squad guys that you talked about. Kiki QT was not on practice squad, but he was inactive for a good chunk of the season, good chunk of last season. He had that 100-yard game against the Colts and played well the rest of the way. Chad Hansen was one of those practice squad guys. Stephen Mitchell, another practice squad guys. Who knows who stays, who goes with the new regime, but those are certainly guys that give you good quality depth at the wide receiver spot because Brandon Cooks, he turned in a Pro Bowl caliber season. When
you think about championship level teams, you think about the stars. Just take the Chiefs, for instance. You think about Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek. You know, I think about Dirty Dan Sorensen. And I don't mean dirty in a bad way. That's his nickname. But Dan Sorensen's a guy that does everything for that team.
Makes plays on defense. Blew up the fake punt against the Texans last year in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the kind of guy you've got to have. The Patriots for a long time had Matt Slater. Still have Matt Slater.
Sure.
A special teams demon, does anything he's asked to do. And you think about a guy like Chad Hansen. He may not be the number one wide receiver here for the Texans ever. But if he can go be your third, fourth wide receiver and step in when needed, or just be that guy when you have four receivers out on the field that gets open, makes a big catch on third down, that's like finding $20 in your pocket because the guy was really a practice squad guy, but he's always been able to play at that level. He just got the opportunity. Yeah. And I was glad to see that he, for one, was able to show that to everybody throughout Houston. That he could be a part of this team going forward.
Hey, earlier in the show, you talked about Zach Cunningham and doing what he did with all the tackles. Another guy who was pretty interesting and pretty bright this year was Tyrell Adams. Yeah. He got thrust into the mix week 5 because of the Benardrick McKinney injury, and all he did pretty much was go out and get double-digit tackles on a regular basis. He had played sparingly, and really only on special teams where he was a factor, but he had played sparingly, if at all, on defense before that.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting for him because there's one player on each side of the ball that wears the green dot, which is the coach comm system, and you have a speaker in your ear where you can hear the coordinator call the plays. Well, that's obviously Deshaun on offense. When Benardrick went out, it went to Tyrell Adams. He was the one who wore the green dot. He was the one that got guys lined up, got guys where they needed to be. No easy task. And then had to go run to the football. And Tyrell will tell you, he had a couple interceptions in his hands, too, that could end up having been big plays. Yeah. One against Jacksonville, and one in Week 17 against Tennessee, that he's probably thinking, man, I hang on to those. There's no telling how those games end up. So, again, another guy that's kind of found money in your pocket. You knew you had him as a special teamer, and you knew he could go as a backup. But now all of a sudden he's got to step into a starting role, and he showed what he can do. So hopefully he's going to be here. He's got to figure out his contract situation. As Romeo Crennel said, the business of football has already started.
Indeed it has. Now, John and I are both wearing microphones, but we're in suits, and we're in a comfy studio, and we're just kind of standing in one spot and trying not to veer off camera. What's it like wearing a microphone in a game and trying to tackle people? Well, you're going to find out after this break. We're back. This is Texans 360 presented by Kroger. Drew, John, it's always fun when you mic up a player for a game, isn't it? You like that?
I love that. I love mic'd up probably more than any segment, anywhere, anytime on HoustonTexans.com.
Well, you are in luck because Vernon Hargrave's corner for the Texans was mic'd up last Sunday. Check it out.
I've been waiting all year for this one. Let's go, man. Hey, DB's on 2, DB's on 2, 1, 2. DB's. I should have bought my cool mask out here. I got this basic one on right now. Woo! Come on now. Yeah. They're right now. I'm on now. There we go. Hey, reroute. 21. Base. Hey, swipe. Top hat. Go.
Watson, flea flicker, looking deep. He's got a man wide open. Cooks, rock and roll, touchdown, Texans!
There we go. We needed it. What we got? Hey, Cage! Let me hit that real quick. What we got?
Watson, back to throw, looking. Fires to the end zone, right side, and caught by Cooks. Touchdown, Houston.
Hey! Bro, he is so fast, bro. Oh, my God. Bro, he went from this side of the field to that side of the field that quick. Come on now.
Tannehill under center, Henry in the backfield, first down for the 25. Here's Henry, big hole, 30, and the ball is out. There's a fumble. The Texans fighting for it. They say they have it, and they do.
Hey!
Carlos Watkins comes out of the pack with it, and Houston gets the football on a Tennessee turnover.
What you need, Coach? I got you. What you need?
Inches away from the goal line, pistol set.
Option to the boundary. Oh!
Second and goal inside the one. Handoff, David Johnson over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Houston.
Watson. On me.
Across the Houston 38-yard line, Tannehill under center. Fakes the give. Tannehill stepping up in the pocket and airing it out downfield. Left side wants Davis, and incomplete.
Hargraves made a nice play right on the tail end of it.
They're going to go for it. 4th down and 11. Here's the snap. On 4th down, Tannehill in the pocket. And he's going to go down. He's sacked back at the 48-yard line.
Stop.
Watson on the keeper after the fake. Throws to the end zone. And it's caught. Touchdown, Houston.
Cage off.
Snap is down, the kick is up, and off the upright, and good. It bounced in as the Texans lose 41-38 to the Titans, but a new era is on the way.
All right, that's going to wrap up this week's show. John, we've got a whole heck of a lot to discuss in the weeks to come. I'm going to have you back on to do this in a little bit because there's going to be a new head coach. We'll know a little bit more about what Caserio is planning to do, and Senior Bowl's on the way. Draft is on the way. In between that, you got the Combine. So thank you, my friend.
You got it, my friend. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. Good to see you as well. Texans 360 is back again, same time, same place next week. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate Mitchell Moreland, as well as Tyler Marcotte and the rest of the folks that put this show together. So long. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.